This is Cadillac Unscripted on 107.9 CDY, bringing you a special re-air of a show that we brought you back in the middle of January of 2020. Just our fourth show that we did with Cadillac Unscripted, and we're doing it for a very special reason. We wanted to revisit our interview with Pat and Sally Goggin from a couple of years ago. So here it is. It's sponsored by Independent Bank. It's Cadillac Unscripted on 107.9 CDY.
So thank you, Rich. A special treat today. We have Pat and Sally Goggin in the studio, and I can't wait to share with the community sort of their journey to how they got here today. And we're going to start with Sally.
Oh,
yes.
Hi, Katy.
Hello. Good morning. She has
Hello,
been...
Katy, too.
Hello.
Pat's here in the corner.
Oh, that's right. Pat came along.
I did.
Welcome.
Just for good luck. So thank you. We're glad to be here.
You've got a face for radio.
Thank you.
So, Sally, you have been called the Meryl Streep of Northern Michigan.
Oh, boy.
That is true.
Ooh.
And so one of the things I want to share with the audience is, can you tell us approximately how many shows you've been in?
But performing in or working production somewhere on over 100.
Performing in as an actor.
Probably 80.
Okay. So of those 80 shows, what are your top 5? What were your favorite 5?
Favorite roles? Probably my very favorite role that I got to do was Taming of the Shrew. I got to play the shrew.
You were Kate.
It was typecasting, but
True.
It was Kate, and I was lucky enough to have a fabulous Petruccio to play opposite and a wonderful director, and it was community theater, and it was an amazing production that I did in Midland.
That's one.
That's one. I played Fanny Bryce.
Oh my!
And that was also in Midland, a fabulous, wonderful production, and one of the very first play that I ever did, the third play I ever did, but the first one that I had a lead in was Oklahoma, and I played Laurie.
Okay.
And I was in awe. And this was in 1970, I think, and I was so young, and I walked out on stage, and this is in the days that people applauded when one of the leads walked out on stage, and I just stopped and stared. I couldn't figure out what they were applauding for, but then got myself back in line and finished my scene and everything. But
awesome.
So those are my 3 and I would have to say that Nonsense is probably one of my favorite shows to do because of the ensemble of it. And I've done it with a couple of different ensembles, and I've performed in it, and I've directed it. And it was written by our cousin, Dan Goggin, who happens to be our daughter's godfather. So it holds a special place in my heart.
What about My Fair Lady?
Yeah, I had a wonderful time doing My Fair Lady, too. The Music Society in Midland was I worked for the organization, too, for about 10 years. They had a $500,000 budget. Maybe I lied. $250,000 budget to perform all of their productions in the year, and they did about 10. And several of those were just choral concerts. But this was in the 1980s. And to have $250,000, to be endowed with that much money to put on a season of shows. They did 2 musical comedies every year, and $36,000 were put into each one of them. Community theater just doesn't have that available. And I imagine there are some places that do that today, but even Midland doesn't do that anymore. And
What about Funny Girl?
Funny Girl was, again, I had a great director. I had a wonderful group of castmates and production crews and these massive sets. Funny Girl had 21 set changes. And so I'm in the wings. I was in almost every scene. I was in the wings, and volunteers build all the costumes. They're changing my clothes. I didn't know. One night I fell 10 feet off the top of a platform, and I'm crawling off stage. And the only people that knew there was a problem were my dressers, who were saying, "Where is she? Why isn't she here? What has she done?" And they're picking me up off the floor, throwing clothes on, and sending me back off on stage. those years, those salad days, I guess you call it, that we lived in Midland for 20 years, and I got to do so many fabulous roles and be involved in so many productions.
Do you call them salad days? Because that's what was for
Well,
dinner?
we were so young.
Oh, I see.
And we were so young, and it was the early times in our lives, and so those were the salad days. That was the beginning. And probably moved on to the entree. Now I'm in the dessert phase.
I love it. So that's wonderful. So you get to Cadillac and you get involved with Footlighters, and then the show MAME comes available for auditions at the Old Town Playhouse in Traverse City. And pardon me for saying so, but you blew their socks off. You land the lead, and you're MAME. What can you tell us about that experience, going to a different community where probably people thought they already knew who the ringer was to be MAME and Sally auditions? What happened?
Well, it's getting to know a whole new group of people. And I've always said, if wherever Pat and I moved, as long as there was a theater, we could find good friends. And Old Town Playhouse, I knew nobody up there. And so I was incredibly nervous at auditions. There was a lot of competition. And I have this thing that I always say, win by intimidation at auditions. And
I've seen it.
I just work very, very hard. So I go in confident of the material and the audition piece that I'm going to sing, and it takes that. You have to work really hard for an audition. Unless you're a man, you can just walk in and get any role you want. But for a really great role, you really have to work and do your homework in order to perform.
You won't tell our listeners, but I get to tell them. So you open up the entertainment section of the Traverse City Record Eagle after a couple of runs of MAME. And the headline reads, "Show lacks luster when Goggin leaves the stage." And of course, I was so tickled for Sally, but then I felt so sorry for the other people in the cast. Oh, thanks, But another thing that happened, kind of in this same season, maybe this was the entree season, if you will, but you got to be such good friends with Joni and she did Forever Patsy
Joni
Cline.
Stanley from Traverse City. She and I did Always Patsy Cline, which, again, that's another one of my favorites. It's a two-woman show. One woman plays Patsy Cline, and the other plays a huge fan that Patsy, and her name is Louise, met at some point in Patsy's career, and they remained friends the rest of her life, her very short life, because she died at 30. But Joni Stanley in Traverse City, there were auditions for the role of Patsy Cline separate from the rest of the show auditions. And they had to send in a tape and be invited to audition for the Patsy Cline role. Joni has this delicious, lovely voice that she sang Patsy Cline the way Patsy Cline sang. Everyone else sang Patsy Cline songs the way that they sing. And Patsy just knocked their socks off. And it reached a point they had to add another weekend, I think a fourth weekend for the show, because every performance was sold out. And remember, there's two women. Who's doing all the talking? Me. Because Joni is singing so fabulously, and we had this true country band with a steel guitar and a mandolin, and oh my gracious, it was a fabulous experience. And the director, Jeanette, was an amazing director. Everything about it was terrific. And then it was offered again on the schedule down in Midland a couple of years later. And so Patsy and I, Joni and I, decided to drive down and audition, and we both got the same roles. Thank God, because we would have felt pretty awful if we didn't. And we got a chance to play a whole nother series of it down in Midland with a different director and band. But
I remember because I saw you in both shows and in both places. And one of my favorite stories about the Midland performance was there's a blogger in the Tri-Cities that covers the arts. And so she came to see Sally. And how many years had it been since you'd performed in Midland?
17 years.
17 years. And so in her blog, she says, I saw Sally perform, and first I cried because we lost Patsy Cline too young. And then I cried because Sally doesn't perform in Midland anymore. That is so that this blogger said that. And it's so true. I think when you came back for that, they thought, oh man, we are missing her. But their loss was our gain. I want to talk about your beautiful adult daughters and how this household of theater, Pat's helping with sets, Mom's a star. How did this impact their lives? Can you share about Trish and Sarah?
Well, because the girls are 8 years apart, Sarah had a lot of babysitters. I'm just going to say that. Pat and I both worked on the shows, and we always did them together. Very unusual if one of us did a show and the other didn't, because he would work the sound and his big joke. Tell him your big joke, Pat.
Well, in those days, the director would pick their crew members, the sound people, the lighting people, the carpenters, all this. Costuming and the whole bit. They'd pick those months in advance. And so and there weren't very many sound people. And they would call me and ask if I would do sound for their show. And I'd have to tell them it depends on how the casting goes. If Sally's cast in the show, then I'd be happy to do it. Well, then the story was, and it's the truth, Sally got parts because of me.
Okay, this just isn't quite sounding factual.
Well, but I'm sure it is.
Throw her a bone, you say.
Throw her a bone. Make her a bush. Can you make her a bush?
She probably could be an excellent bush too. But back to the girls.
Well, so Sarah was born during this time that I think I got pregnant between weekends of Funny Girl, but we
too much information.
It's a good thing we don't have a webcam for this particular show right now, because Pat's expressions are priceless.
There goes your family audience.
Well, in actuality, the joke is that I got laryngitis between weekends and I couldn't say no. Anyway.
That's outrageous.
So Sarah was... She was. We took her to the theater often with us, so everybody knew her. She knew how to behave. I remember taking her to a dress rehearsal for a show, and she was just a little baby in a carrying case, and she was almost asleep. And then it was Hello Dolly, and the number Hello Dolly started, and she threw her pacifier out of her mouth. Then her eyes flew open, and it was like, here I am. I'm ready for my entrance. And so both the girls were exposed to a whole lot of theater. Sarah was lucky enough to do a lot of stuff at the Midland Center for the Arts as a kid. We moved up here when she was 14, up to Cadillac. And so Trish got involved in things a little bit later. And she saw me do some things with Footlighters. She did 1 or 2 shows, I think, with Footlighters, but then got really involved in high school theater. And she got to play some great roles, and I was always there kind of as a coach for kids, too, on all the shows she was in. So she loved theater because of being exposed to it so much. And she would ride an hour to school and an hour home on the bus. And she had a CD player that she was constantly putting in shows, the music from musicals in, and had her headphones and was listening to music. So much so that Trish now works in the theater. She she's worked for years as a box office manager in professional theaters, and manages a huge, beautiful restored theater in downtown Minneapolis. And she just received a new job for a company called Broadway Across America. And they're the company that brings in musicals into places like East Lansing and Grand Rapids and Minneapolis and Madison, Wisconsin. And she has a large territory that she will be very involved in the ticketing for all of these places. And she absolutely loves it.
You've been involved with the Footlighters for over 20 years. The group has amazing momentum. Where will they be in 5 years?
Well, I'd love to say that they would have a $250,000 budget to be able to do shows, but I just don't see that happening. Hopefully soon we'll be we'll be able to develop our own space, and we'll be able to use it for our productions, and other groups in town will also be able to have it available to them for any kind of event that they would like to present. Maybe it's just a big meeting. Maybe it's a convention of some kind. But I think most of us are looking at this theater space as a very easily changed space, not an auditorium like is in the schools, because we already have that in Cadillac. We need a space that is going to be adjustable for the event that's there, and it will make the performances interesting. Right now, Footlighters have performed in a variety of new spaces for them too. They did an event last year at the Elks. They did an event last Christmas at the Marketplace in downtown. All of those things, we're hoping just to meet new audiences and get out more and make people aware we're here. Having our own facility means people will know where they can go buy tickets, where they can go audition, where they can find more information about Footlighters. And we have gained such fabulous momentum. And there are such wonderfully talented people from all walks of life in the community. I couldn't be more pleased for them.
Wonderful. You said something to just me the other day, and it blew me away. You prefer rehearsals to performances. Can you tell us why?
Well, of course. Rehearsals is where the magic happens. I think a visual artist would say the same thing. The satisfaction comes in the creation. And unfortunately for me, and I shouldn't admit this, after opening night, I don't really want to do it again. I've done it. I've created this piece of art, and I've done it. There we go. If opening night doesn't go well, then I might want to do it one or two more times. But I love rehearsals, and I love rehearsals whether I'm performing or directing, because that's where the molding, that's where the magic happens, is in rehearsals.
Does it feel like work?
Never. Oh, God, never. Never, never, never. Never. I might go home at the end of the day and go, oh my God, I worked so hard on that. Or, oh, this is never going to happen. Pat would agree with that I'll come home a week before Tech Week starts and go, oh, it's just never going to come together. And it always does. Sometimes better than others. But the rehearsals are great.
What's your dream role?
At my age right now, Dolly. I'd love to play Hello, Dolly. There's a lesser well-known play called The Drowsy Chaperone, and the Drowsy Chaperone role is the one I'd like to do. I'm really too old now to play, to be in Gypsy and play Mama Rose in Gypsy, but that's one that had been hanging there as something I'd like to do.
What's next for Sally?
Actually, I am producing. We're doing Mamma Mia with Footlighters in June, and I'm the producer on that show. It means you're helping out the cast and the director in things that might be needed that they can't seem to make happen or need to find to make the event even better.
So we had our first show that we did with Chef Herman, and we asked him how he does in somebody else's restaurant. How do you do at somebody else's show? You're just in the audience. What runs through your mind? Can you relax and enjoy yourself?
I have my moments.
Tell us.
No, I just think there are some times, and you have to understand, if you just go to a show, you have the advantage of seeing all the perfection. And so when one little thing happens, you go, oh, they really missed that opportunity right there. That could have been like this. But that's just my take on it. Everybody else in the audience might have an idea of that didn't work really well for me, or this worked excellently for me, and for maybe another person it isn't as cool. The production, we just saw on Friday night, the production of Boeing that the Footlighters put on, sensationally funny, gut-wrecking funny. I mean, and there isn't a thing I would have changed. There isn't anything I would have changed. They all had great comic timing through it.
Wonderful. That's high praise coming from you.
No, it's...
More of our special re-airing of our chat with Pat and Sally Goggin from a couple of years ago, January 2020, coming up on 107.9 CDY. Cadillac Unscripted is sponsored by Independent Bank. Cadillac Unscripted on 107.9 CDY is sponsored by Independent Bank. Our second segment of this week's show Show number 4 is with Pat Goggin.
Pat Goggin runs our local United Way for Wexford and Missaukee counties.
That's right.
How long have you been in that role?
10 years. I was on the board prior to that for maybe another 10 years.
So did the board come to you, or did you apply for the job, or how does that go?
I was drafted. Yes.
Okay, you don't even know anything about football, and you just threw out a football word.
Oh my gosh, that's a football term.
Well,
Okay.
pretty much.
Yes,
Yeah.
That was baseball.
Well, okay, same thing.
I think
What
they
else?
do- I think
I thought it was military.
Oh, wow. Well, okay.
it works all across the board.
But you were drafted.
I was drafted. I was invited to come sit on the board, so I did for one term, which was 3 years, and then I did a second, and then I did a third, and then you're required to go off for a year, and then they asked me to come back, and then they asked me to be the interim director, and that flowed into being the permanent director.
We know how that goes.
Yes,
I mean,
yes, yes.
We do.
Yes. So that was 10 years ago.
All right. Tell us how fundraising has changed, because we just had this discussion the other night about millennials and how you raise money a totally different way. But from a 5,000-foot view, how's it changed in the last 5 to 10 years?
Well, it's changed a lot with the internet.
Okay.
There are so many ways that people can participate now. But the idea of talking about the millennials and the X and the Y generation and the baby boomers is a completely different conversation than how to raise the money. They come together, but they're quite different. Charitable giving through a United Way unfortunately has declined somewhat over the 20 years I've been here. A little bit each year, 3-5%, something like that. On the other hand, giving across the board has increased. Now that, and I don't mean just to United Way. I mean, across the board to all these different organizations, and that happens because of the technology today. You name it, the different type of vehicle that's available online.
GoFundMe pages.
Absolutely.
Okay.
GoFundMe, the Facebook opportunities, things like that can make a tremendous difference in a very big hurry. So we're struggling, looking at ways to keep up with that. With United Way, the overall premise is somewhat different. With the GoFundMe page, they're looking to build money right now today for this project over here. Boom. With the United Way, we feel that our job is to help people be philanthropic in their life. And to help them do that in a very easy way, a little bit each week or each 2 weeks out of each paycheck. So we would like people to, typically through their workplace, they would go in and fill out a pledge card. So out of each paycheck, they could contribute $3, $5, $10 out of each paycheck. And to make it quite painless, I would tell you that some of the box stores in town participate. They might participate at a $2, $3, $4 level. But I'll tell you what, those are some of the largest campaigns we have in town.
I see.
And that's very surprising. The types of the ways people can do this. So you can see with that, it's a little bit each week. It adds up to a lot. So if you were somebody who had a passion for, and I'll probably use Oasis quite often as an example, because for a variety of reasons. But if someone was going to send Oasis a $25 check or a $50 check a year because they the passion for that situation, but through payroll deduction, if they did $2 a week, that would translate to over $100, and it's pretty much painless. So as we try to keep up with the changes on the battlefield for people's money, where the GoFundMe page is going to go after a chunk of money overnight for a particular cause.
And it has an ending.
It has
too,
an
a sense of urgency.
It has a sense of urgency. The tools we're exploring have a much easier approach, less impact on your pocketbook. One way was I tried to research credit card companies that would make the donation look and feel and walk and talk like a pledge card. A United Way donation through workplace campaign is via, like I said, the $2, $3, but that's out of a paycheck. So I wanted to find a credit card company that would let the donor pick the day that their contributions start. And so if you're paid 26 times a year, like most of us are, or 24 times a year, every twice a month, or every week if you wanted to, if you worked at one of the box stores, or once a month, or once a quarter. However, the answer is yes. How do you want to do it to the donor? That's the question. So we would find, it took a long time to find a credit card company that would allow the donor to do that, and then to able to then fill out the page and let them either send it to us, or we would direct it to, they would direct their donation to a specific cause. That works very well. We're looking at a new one that frankly hasn't even been presented to the board yet. This is an idea where the roundup, and we've all seen this when you go into a store and it gives you an opportunity to round up your change or to make a donation to, but in that situation, it's typically the store, let's say Family Fair, that's where I've seen it most recently, Family Fair, where you can round it up to pay for what they've negotiated. Lost veterans, let's make it up. So you don't get a choice of where you're going to send it, but you do get to participate. Well, we found an organization that turned that around a little bit, where someone would, if we end up doing this, they could go to our website, and through a secured process, they could set up their credit card, and every time they swiped their card, it would round up to United Way. Well, that seems kind of cool. And they even allow the donor to put a cap on it. They can say, I'll do this to $10 a month. Now, when you hear me say $10 a month right out of the gate, that's a lot more than what we were doing with payroll deduction. So that has some real appeal to us, because it feels like we might even be able to get ahead a little bit. And
it's a new avenue.
It's a new avenue. And again, it's very slow, it's very steady, very easy to do.
So I've served on your allocations panel before.
Yes.
There's not enough money to meet.
Oh, there never is.
There's all these organizations coming to United Way for money, but the pot's only so big. Yeah. What's the organization's biggest challenge? Is that it? Is it fundraising?
Well, fundraising is our biggest challenge, but the whole allocation process. Katy, you hit the nail on the head. It's a 2-to-1 ratio. The requests are twice what we're able to raise.
Wow.
That's a lot. We get about 12 to 15 agencies that apply for funding each year. It could be different every year. There's always somebody who drops off and always somebody who gets added back on, is added on. We rarely turn people down unless it just doesn't fit. We're strictly human services at this point. So if somebody came in for the shelter, for the pet shelter, we couldn't do that. But we would find another thing that's close. We had a lady who asked that very thing, and we suggested we can't do that, but we can do Pause with a Cause, because that deals with animals serving people. But the whole allocation process, where we tried to bring in 30 people from the community, a citizens review panel, and the agencies who are applying for funding sit in front of this panel of 5 people and plead their case. They talk to them about how they're going to use the funding. We just don't give the Boy Scouts, $100. Gone are those days, a long time. No, they'd have to tell us how they want to use it. And so you're
responsible to your donors.
We were absolutely right. We were able to say to our donors, we know how this money is being spent.
That's right. Excellent. So I want to talk about Pat and Sally, the couple. How many years of marriage?
44 years. Now, actually, we prefer to treat it like the attorneys do, so we're at 88 years.
Actually, in April, it'll be 45 years. So
remarkable.
90 years, Pat.
90 years? Wow, Sal.
Yeah.
Remarkable.
Yeah.
What's your secret?
Every day, many times a day. First thing she hears in the morning, I love you, Sally.
It's true.
And
It's
the last
true.
thing at night. And then many times during the day, or hanging up on the phone.
And also, you have to say, we would never say we don't make each other crazy
Oh my God.
sometimes. That happens. And
He's wholeheartedly agreeing with this. See?
Yes.
Okay.
we both
Again, you're
realize
right,
it.
Sally.
And-
Again, you're right.
A lot of that.
The second time. Yeah. And I don't, he's my best friend. I think
He's my
he's
best
really
friend.
funny. He makes me laugh all the time. My
Keep
life
going.
is never boring.
Keep going.
What's your favorite thing to do? The weekend hits, and you're both. I mean, you're running the town. I mean, you really are, the Mr. and Mrs. Cadillac. Truly.
Well, I'm glad Joy Van Driesen and I here today.
Oh, she's coming. She's going to be on the show soon.
Okay, well-
but really, what do you do to relax?
I think we get in the car and we'll take a day trip somewhere. With the advent of Yelp is my friend. I really enjoy Yelp, and that allows me to look at a community and see what are all the restaurants, or what are all the distilleries, things like that. So we'll chart out a little path, and then with the help of other apps, we can go in there and find out how much the drive time is, and we can set it up so we get home at a reasonable hour. It works very well. So I think taking those, and I'll end up planning most of those, because poor Sally took that role all these years with the kids, and oh my gosh, and so she so much appreciates it when she doesn't have to know.
And is it always a new place?
Sometimes we have favorite places
Yeah.
that we like to go back to if it's been a while since we've been there. I'm going to tell you the other thing. He brings me coffee in bed every morning. Now,
Wow.
this has not been our entire married life. It's probably been the last 4 or 5 years.
What triggered that?
It's funny you'd ask, because we talked about that recently. Like, when did this start?
And how do we shake
And
it?
how do I shake this?
And damn, how am I going to change that?
I think it happened when Sally had some knee surgery.
Okay. Sure.
I think that's when it was.
Sure. It was necessity, and then she got used to it.
Yeah,
she liked it.
Yep.
We're getting ready to close, but Pat, you have this passion for water and for Lake Mitchell and your boats, and you're kind of the boat whisperer. Can you talk to us, the two of you? Is this something you do together as well?
Yes, it is. The boating on the lake is something we enjoy doing together. We've enjoyed that with our kids, with friends, and
Our
being
son-in-laws, our
son-in-laws,
grandson.
Yep, grandson. Being on the water is vitally important to me, just to see it. I count the days when the ice covers the lake, and I count the days until the lake's open, and I can pretty much tell you when the ice went off last year.
Nothing Pat enjoys more than putting the dock in every year. How many people say that? He loves to put the dock in. It's
And
like he's a
leave me
little
alone.
kid again playing with his trucks and boats. He loves to put the dock in all by himself.
Why do you like to put the dock in?
Well, Katy, I'll bet you enjoy. In fact, I know you enjoy gardening
Yeah.
and cooking.
Yes.
If you're going to come into my kitchen, don't be telling me how to do this.
Oh.
You're welcome to come in and sit on the stool, and we'll talk, and we'll have some wine, but don't be telling me how to cook this.
You just eat the food. Yes.
I'll just eat the food.
That's right.
I enjoy the process of putting in the dock that very same way, even if I only get one section in today because I had to negotiate this or that. And so that's it. And
I think it's because your boats get to come in after the dock goes in.
Yes,
That's why.
yes,
I
yes.
think it's a precursor to your fabulous time that you have out on the water.
I think that's fair.
And I think maybe for the first 3 days of putting the dock, he's having a wonderful time. And then after that, it's like, okay, we got to get the rest of this in because I got to get the boats in. I want to go out on a boat now. He's ready to be on a boat. And he gets so excited putting each one of them in. Yeah.
It's wonderful.
And it's lovely when we come home from work to just grab a magazine or a paper or something and snacks and just take the pontoon out in the middle of the
Forgot
boat.
about the fuel, the cocktail.
Oh, the cocktail. The cocktail, too. And he drives the boat out into the middle of the lake and then just turns it off, and we just float down the lake for a while. And it's so calming. It makes the day end beautifully.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for everything that you brought to our little community. And I don't see you slowing down anytime soon. So thank you for sharing your gifts with us. You truly are two gems in Cadillac, Michigan, and we love you so much. It's been wonderful being on the air, Rich, with Pat and Sally Goggin.
Thank you, Katy.
Thanks, Katy.